Well, energy analysts are concerned that oil prices could surge further if the military escalation in the Middle East continues. Oil prices spiked nearly $120 per barrel before falling back. This happened yesterday, this morning. Things are really looking much better. Oil prices hit levels yesterday not seen since mid-2022 as some major producers cut supplies. G7 countries have not made a decision yet on the potential release of emergency oil stocks. There are warnings that if the price of oil and gas remain high, this could fuel inflation in major world economies. Now, to talk more about this, we are joined by Economist and Senior Lecturer at Wits University, Dr. Lumkile Mondi. Dr. Mondi, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure having a conversation with you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Good morning to your viewers as well.
Dr. Mondi, it's almost impossible to keep on top of the story. It really isn't. I mean, yesterday we saw oil prices almost hitting $120 a barrel. It surged. And then, for some reason, it's recovered quite a lot overnight, and it hit levels of $91. I mean, this is never normally seen with the oil price being this volatile, having such major jumps. What's happening?
Firstly, let me put it in economic perspective. In work conducted by the International Monetary Fund in 2023, they estimated that a 10% increase in oil prices will reduce global growth by 0.15% and increase global inflation by 0.4%. The impact, of course, will vary depending on each country's domestic energy mix and their imports and exports, with huge impact being experienced by Europe and Asia. Therefore, what we've seen happening recently, in particular, the big drop from about $120 Brent to below 100, it is driven mainly by the pain that's being experienced, mainly in America, whereby the economy is not performing well. We saw that 94,000 jobs were lost in February, and prices are rising, and bond prices are rising. So America and many countries are going to experience what we call stagflation, whereby high inflation because of the oil prices, but also high interest rates in response to the growing prices across all industries because of high oil prices. Yeah. So that's why we're seeing this volatility, is that the Americans were not prepared. They went to war without preparing their own people. Similarly, Europe was not prepared either. So they have to make a strategic retreat. And I think President Trump yesterday indicated that the war might be ending soon because it is hurting. And it's hurting Americans, hurting Europeans, hurting Asians, and of course Africans as well.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I mean, I'm seeing a lot of news reports this morning talking to how South Africans are going to struggle under all of this. These articles obviously been written before we saw a recovery in the oil price. But then again, we don't know where it's going today. It may deteriorate once again. But some people saying that we could arrive at the petrol stations next week or next month, I beg your pardon, and start paying R8 more a litre. Very dramatic predictions at this point in time. We're seeing the currency also fluctuating very badly. I mean, just the rand this morning is at 16.27 to the US dollar. That there's just ups and downs and ups and downs. This market uncertainty and volatility, how bad is it for our economy? Because things were looking good at the beginning of this year when we heard the budget and we saw things in line. Inflation, interest rates, all of those things were looking positive. Now, looks like a very different story.
So there's been a lot of positive for South Africa on this because of this war. Firstly, the Hormuz Strait closure and the diversion of ships going to Asia specifically via the Cape of Good Hope provides quite a lot of opportunities for our ports in bunkering services and others, refreshment and other needs that may be required by these ships that are diverting via Cape of Good Hope. And therefore, we're really underpinning or supporting or complementing our commitment by the Minister of Transport to the Treasury to invest on our ports infrastructure and make sure that we are ready for any stability that may come in the next few years. However, at the same time, because we're a major oil importer, and already the Monetary Policy Committee had warned us that the geopolitics may impact on our interest rate outlook. Therefore, we don't see any continuous cuts in the foreseeable future, because of the important inflation that will come through. You're mentioning about the consumers paying a heavy price going forward because of weakening rand, but also of rising oil prices, which would have impact both on on petrol and diesel. So for consumers who are already stretched, in particular because we've got very poor public infrastructure in South Africa, and therefore people have to rely on private transport or their own vehicles, it means that there's going to be very few cents in the pocket and may well impact on demand for retailers, for hospitality and other luxuries that may be needed, with the retail basket really shrinking and therefore impacting on many of the stocks that we say JC that are in the retail and wholesale and hospitality sectors.
Yeah, indeed. And I know that we've got a lot of our oil that comes from the Middle East, but also from Africa. So, you know, that's something that we can look at and be grateful that we do get a lot of our imports from, I think, Nigeria, Angola, and those countries as well. But if we had to look at particularly, as I mentioned, interest rates, inflation, how do you think that this is going to impact us? Because, you know, I'm not sure that South Africans can once again face these difficult global conditions or these global financial conditions to hit pockets here at home.
Unfortunately, I mean, South Africa has really played a critical role in the international space. We know that we've been calling upon these countries that are at war, including America, who have been very naughty in terms of bypassing the institutions that we formed in the World War II settlement, specifically the United Nations, whereby there's been complete disregard on the machinery that provides us to settle issues. Even in the nuclear space, the International Atomic Energy Board that we use as an institution to check whether Iran, in this case, had nuclear capabilities that could hurt the world. Those machineries have been undermined, and South Africa has been very clear about that, you know, let's use these institutions and talk and engage on that. But unfortunately, this is an environment that are dealing with, and the Monetary Policy Committee has been very clear that in light of what we call geopolitics, which is war, that these wars are going to be here for quite a while, because we've got leadership in the world that is undermining these institutions and therefore ready to go to war to suit the leaders' interests. In that environment, it means that we're going to live with volatility. We're going to have to be very careful in terms of expectations of the future and be very conservative, because I think with war, it means that shortage of many goods and services and mean high prices and high interest rates. Therefore, we may see many countries experiencing stagflation, hurting our exports. We know that, as I said earlier, that Europe, one of my major trading partners, is going to experience stagflation because of the continuation of these wars. The NATO proxy war with Russia, as well as now the ongoing war on Iran. these are all going to impact our exports and therefore impact on jobs, impact on all the plans that the minister talked to 2 weeks ago of a positive environment and South Africa being investable in a very volatile, war-inclined world where institutions of governance are being undermined by leaders who are prepared to go to war and over those institutions.
Dr. Mondi, just as a closing question, where do you see this going? Because obviously one of the reasons given as to why we've seen the oil price improving overnight is because purely on comments made by US President Donald Trump saying that the war is ahead of schedule and he expects this to end very soon. That's what he's saying. But what we're actually sort of watching and seeing happening around the world is very hard to believe that this war is going to end anytime soon. What are your views? How does this end? What do you think is going to be the outcome here?
The Americans and the Israelis were never going to win the war anyway. They knew it. And therefore, they're trying to find ways of what you called a strategic retreat. And strategic retreat means that you engage with Putin, and through Putin, Putin engages with Iran to try and find a way of how America can withdraw without being embarrassed, and then move forward to another land and a recovery. But it's going to have a huge impact in that region because it's going to have implication for many of the GCIC countries, the Bahrain, the UAE, and others around hosting American bases. So this is a huge game changer, and I think it's going to really be very exciting for international relations scholars, but also cement South Africa's position in the global space of using global institutions to secure disagreements and peace in the world.
All right, Doctor, we'll leave it there. Dr. Mondi, Lumkile Mondi is an economist and senior lecturer at Wits University, talking to us about the global events that, of course, are leading to extreme volatility on global markets, affecting pricing. Brent crude, we saw it reach up to $120 yesterday. It's now recovered, but still, this volatility is causing absolute chaos here at home and around the world in terms of pricing. All right, we'll leave it there. Quick break. I have to say goodbye to you after this.